All right, welcome everyone to this little mini course on Gregorian Chant. Whether you want to be part of a schola or simply want to pray better with Gregorian Chant, this is the place to begin your journey. If you don't know me yet, my name is Christopher Jasper, and I've been studying and directing Gregorian Chant for over 25 years, including studies at the Abbey of Solesmes. Today, I'm excited to take you on this introductory journey, where I'll be teaching you how to conquer your most difficult obstacles and dispel any fears. Over the next few minutes, we're going to dive deep into what you need to know to start making this happen. First, we'll dispel any concerns over lack of prior training. Then we'll discover the basics of how to read square notation. And then I'll close by addressing some quick-fire common issues, such as I lack resources and training. I have a busy schedule and have difficulty finding time to practice. I have no one to study with or sing with, and I don't understand Latin or know how to pronounce it correctly. By the end of this video, you will know how to read the basics of square notation, have answers to all of the aforementioned issues, and I'll give you some great resources to continue your journey as well. And if you want to take this even further, I've got something special I'm working on for you, so stick around for the whole video. All right, let's get started. You may be thinking to yourself, but I've never had any musical training. I don't know how to read the notation. I don't have a good voice, etc. Let me take you back a bit. I didn't always know how to sing Gregorian Chant either. When I first started, I didn't know how to read the notation, I didn't have a good voice, I didn't have any kind of musical training or education. In fact, to this day, neither I nor any one of the other members of Floriani have any musical degrees. When I first started, like many of you, I couldn't sing what I saw on the page, nor did I have a good voice, and I desperately wanted to sing with ease. It was a tough spot to be in, but then I had some excellent directors who trained me. And it opened up a whole new world of possibilities, and now I want to share what I have learned with you. One of the most critical keys to mastering any challenging skill is having the right mindset. So take a moment and imagine yourself singing Gregorian Chant confidently, proficiently, with ease, in whatever setting you desire. At home, in a choir, maybe even directing a choir. And now throw out any fears or doubts you may have and firmly believe that with God's grace and a little guidance, you can absolutely achieve that. If you're only interested in learning to sing Gregorian Chant for yourself at home or as part of the congregation at Mass, it really doesn't take a whole lot of training, nor do you have to have a wonderful voice. All you need is to be able to match pitch. That is, to sing the same note that is played for you. Remember, chant is prayer first, music second, or to put it another way, elevated prayer, sung prayer. On the other hand, if you want to be a cantor or schola director, then more training and study will be needed, but have no fear, because I'm here to make that as easy for you as possible. Picture that goal you have again. Imagine yourself singing confidently and with ease. Don't think it's possible? Well, countless individuals have already reached that goal through my online courses, even those who have never had any training before, and so can you. So, now that we've dispelled your worries and doubts about lack of training and know-how, let's address the most common problem I hear. How do I read chant's square notation? Without a doubt, the number one challenge I hear is, I can't read Gregorian Chant's square notation. If you've been struggling with this, you're not alone. But there's a simple way to overcome it, and today I'm going to show you exactly how using a very popular chant that most of you probably already know, the Salve Regina. Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae. So let's talk about how to solve this issue. The first step is to understand the scale and the clefs. When you understand these, the music on the page will immediately start to make so much more sense to you. And remember, it's all about taking things one step at a time and having patience. You don't need to do everything at once or try to master everything in 10 minutes. Rome wasn't built in a day, and the best things in life take time. Think of it as a journey and savor all the moments along the way. So what scale do we use in Gregorian chant? This is the first major point to understanding square notation. It's called the diatonic scale. Now, if you don't recognize the name, I'm sure you already know the sound of it. It's the scale that goes like this. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. They even made a famous song about this scale in the musical The Sound of Music.
Do, re, mi. Do, re, mi. Do, re, mi. The first three notes just happen to be do, re, mi. Do, re, mi. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Oh, let's see if I can make it easier.
This scale is made of 8 degrees and 7 intervals between them. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and do. 8 degrees and 7 intervals between them. Each of the intervals or distances between adjacent degrees is a whole step. Do to re, re to mi, fa to sol, sol to la, la to ti. These are all whole steps. And whole steps. Do, re, re, mi, fa, sol, sol, la, la, ti. But in 2 places, and only 2, the intervals are half the distance and therefore are called half steps. These are from mi to fa and ti to do, half steps. Mi, fa, ti, do. If you're having trouble hearing the difference between half step and whole step, here's what they sound like next to each other. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step. Now, if we look at the scale a little closer, we can see that if we divide it in half, each half has the same exact pattern of intervals. Do, re, mi, fa is made of whole step, half step, and sol, la, ti, do is also made of whole step, half step. They have the exact same pattern of intervals. The interval between the 2 halves, or joining the 2 halves from fa to sol, is an additional whole step. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Now, most of you can probably sing up the scale no problem, but what you should also work on is practice singing the scale backward, or down the scale. Do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. This is one tip which will greatly help you in your sight singing abilities. So, we have our ingredients, the sounds of the diatonic scale, but how do we make them visible? How do we put them on paper in a way that we can easily read them? First, we will have to make 4 horizontal lines. This is called the staff or stave, and the lines are numbered 1 through 4, bottom to top. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the spaces are 1 to 3, bottom to top. But why 4 lines? Well, because with 4 lines and 3 spaces, we can easily put do immediately below the first line, And if we continue to put each degree of the scale, we can see re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and do. So 4 lines easily allows us to represent the full scale, and because in Gregorian chant the range of the melodies is generally modest, 4 lines is all we really need. But if the chant does go a little higher or lower at certain points, we can add a little line above or below the staff to accommodate those extra high or low notes, like this. And these are called ledger lines. By the way, if you are enjoying this video so far and find it helpful, please click the like button so this can reach more people like yourself and help them out as well. Okay, so we have our scale and our staff lines and our square notes, but which note is related to which degree of the scale? Is do always on the top line? No, it isn't. So how can we know where the degrees of the scale are on the staff? For this, we need some kind of key to unlock this mystery, and in Gregorian chant, we have 2 keys called clefs. In fact, that is what the word clef means, key. Back in the Middle Ages, before the sol-fa syllable names of the scale were invented, they gave each of the degrees of the scale a letter name, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. In the 11th century, a Benedictine monk named Guido d'Arezzo invented the sol-fa syllable names, taking them from the hymn Ut queant laxis. Here you can see side by side, as I draw them out, how C equals do, then re equals, D, mi equals E, fa, F, sol, G, la, A, T, B, and do is again C. Now, if you are familiar with contemporary musical theory, don't think that the letter names equal the pitches on a keyboard. They don't. The letter names are merely a way of identifying the degrees of the diatonic scale and can be sung on any pitch. The letters do not correspond to any particular pitch. But how do these letters help us identify the scale on the staff? Well, back in the Middle Ages, first of all, let's go ahead and draw another staff here. Okay, so now that we have our other staff, back in the Middle Ages, if do, or C, was on the 3rd line, for example, they would write the letter C at the beginning of that line, like this. Now, if C or do is on the 3rd line, then which degree of the scale would the top line be? If this is C or do, what's the top line? That's right. The top line here would be mi, or in the letter system, the letter E. Do, re, mi. Now, what would the 2nd line be? That's right, la, or in the letter system, A. Do, ti, la. Do, re, mi. Do, ti, la. And the space immediately below the 2nd line, the first space, would be sol, exactly. And in the letter system, that would be G. Do, ti, la, sol. Now let's go ahead and draw another staff. So other times they might want to identify where fa or F is. And for example, if we were going to have F or fa on the 3rd line, they would write the letter F at the beginning of that line. Now in this case, with F or fa on this 3rd line, now where is do? That's right. Do would be on the 1st space now. fa, mi, re, do, or the letter C. Now, if do is on the first space, what would this top fourth line be? Fa is the third line. What's the top fourth line? That's right, la, or A in the letter system. Fa, sol, la, fa, mi, re, do. But in modern square notation, we don't use the letters at the beginning of the lines anymore. Instead, we use highly stylized versions of these letters, which were developed in the early Renaissance. The letter C came to this figure, and F was represented by this figure. This is a highly stylized letter C, and this is a highly stylized letter F, which graphically looks the same as the C, but with this figure on the backside of it. So these are our two clefs in Gregorian chant, the C and the F clef, the do, and fa. So now let's take a look at the famous Salve Regina chant. Here we see our square notes, we see our four lines, but which clef is being used and where is it located? That's right, it's using the C or do clef, and, and it's located on the top fourth line, which tells us that this is where do is, which means that re is directly above it. And if we were to sing down the scale from here, we would easily see where all of the other degrees of the scale are. We would have la on the third line, fa on the second line, re on the first line, and then this bottom space below the first line would be do. And so now we can see what each of these notes are. The first note is do. Our second note would be mi. Our third note would be sol, and then la and sol. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, do, mi, sol, la, sol. Do, mi, sol, la, do, ti, la, sol, sol. Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae. Let's take a look at another chant. Here is the Sanctus from Mass 11. What clef is used here, and where is it located? That's right, it's using the fa or F clef and on the third line, so we know that is where fa is. So, now that we know that fa is on the third line, where now is do located? Right, on the first space. Do is now down here. And if fa is on the third line and do on the first space, then what is this note, this second note? Which degree of the scale would this be? That's right, this would be la. Fa, mi, re, do, ti, la. If fa is this third line, then what now is the top line? Exactly, la again. Fa, sol, la. So we have a low la and a high la. Now, I don't expect you to be able to sight sing this chant already. That will take a little bit of time and practice. But go ahead and follow along with me as I sing this first phrase in solfege. Re, la, do, re, do, mi, re, mi, fa, sol, la, sol, fa, mi, re, mi. Now follow along as I sing it again with the actual text. Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus Dominus. Notice that I didn't give myself any starting pitch, I just automatically sang this on a pitch that was comfortable for my voice. Again, this is because there are no specified pitches in Gregorian chant. It is intended to be sung on whatever pitch best suits the singer or the choir. Now, at this point, you might object, but Mr. Jasper, how do I know if I'm actually singing the notes and intervals correctly? How do I know if I'm pronouncing the Latin correctly? Well, obviously, without any live and direct communication with you, I can't answer that. But in my course, I provide you with a variety of guided exercises to help you correctly identify intervals and proper Latin pronunciation. I'll talk more about the course later. For now, let's take a brief moment to talk just a little bit about the shapes of the notes. As you can see, most of them are square in shape, and even more so if we go back to our Salve Regina. Almost all of the notes in this are square. But here in our Sanctus, we can see some additional shapes. For example, here's a square with a stem on one side. Here's another one with a stem on the opposite side. Does this change the duration of that note? Absolutely not. No matter what shape the note has, the value of every note is determined by the syllable of the text on which it is sung. The names of the notes, what they mean, why they have these various peculiarities, etc. This is all explained in depth in my actual course. But let's look at two note groups in particular. If we look at the first notes on the third Sanctus, we see two notes stacked on top of each other, and then again, two more notes stacked on top of each other. Whenever you see this, the bottom note is always sung first, then the upper note. So in this case, it would sound like this. Sanctus, Sa, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol. Now look at the first notes of the second Sanctus. Here, the shape has this kind of sweeping, sliding figure to it. First of all, where exactly is the first note and where the second? The first note is located here at the top of this sweeping, sliding figure, which in this case happens to be the degree of Re. And then the second note is at the bottom of the figure right here, which in this case is Do. And then the third note is clearly marked out and is on the degree of Mi. Re, do, mi, re, do, mi. So why the slide, the sweeping figure from note 1 down to note 2? Does it mean to slide or scoop with the voice? No, absolutely not. Why it is drawn that way, I explain in my course, but it is merely sung re, do, mi. Re, do, mi, sanctus. Okay, we've covered a lot so far, and I want to make sure you're feeling confident. One question I often get is, what is the rhythm of chant, and what do the dots and little horizontal lines over certain notes mean? First, the dots and lines. You can see here is a dot, here is a dot, here's one of the horizontal lines over the note. Not all square notation has these dots and lines. These are rhythmical markings which were invented by Dom Mokoro at the beginning of the 20th century, but they do have their basis in the manuscripts of the Middle Ages. If you happen to have any sheet music of square notation with these markings, a dot next to a note does not mean that the note is 1.5 times longer. It means to double the length of that note. For example, Sanctus, 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 etc. Horizontal lines, on the other hand, such as this one here, mean a slight lengthening, a slight swelling of that note. This here is not a ledger line, like we mentioned earlier, because the ledger line would only be printed if there were a note on it. So here, this is one of those rhythmical horizontal lines telling us to slightly lengthen this note. There is much more which can be said about these, but that is the short and simple answer. As for the rhythm of the chant, it is primarily, but not entirely, influenced by the rhythm of the text as it would be pronounced in a solemn declamation. For example, let's take this Gloria in Excelsis Deo from Mass 8. This text here, Et in terra pax hominibus bone voluntatis, speaking it as a solemn declamation. Et in terra pax hominibus bone voluntatis. Now, if I speak that same text but on a single tone, it would sound like this. Et in terra pax hominibus bone voluntatis. Then if I add a melody to it, for example, this melody from Mass 8, it would sound like this. Et in terra pax hominibus bone voluntatis. Notice how I'm not going to extremes. The notes are not all totally measured with equal value as they would be with a metronome, as they would be in a piece of music by Bach or Mozart, like this. Et in terra pax hominibus bone voluntatis. Nor are they so varied as to sound sporadic like this. Et in terra pax hominibus bone voluntatis. Instead, they are sung with a general evenness and smoothness, yet still respecting the natural rhythm and expression of the text, which lends itself to the very prayerfulness of the chant, not to mention being able to more easily understand the text. Et in terra pax hominibus bone voluntatis. This was the main driving force behind Dom Guéranger's restoration of the chant in the 19th century. He wanted it to be prayed again, not just sung as music. The common practice of singing the chant in his day was very measured with equal value, and Dom Guéranger said that he would rather sing the chants with a faulty melody and the original free-flowing rhythm than to sing with the purest melodies, but with that metered rhythm. He also went so far as to say that the custom of beating the time in the chant was the, quote, work of the devil. I don't know about that, but I think it certainly sounds much better in free rhythm. Now, if you have any previous knowledge about Gregorian chant, you might be thinking, wait, I thought that all the notes were supposed to be counted in groups of 2s and 3s and all have the same value. That's one theory developed by Dom Mokoro at the turn of the 19th century and is generally referred to as the Solem method. And while it did become quite popular, it doesn't quite follow the traditional principles laid down by Dom Guéranger and his successors. Dom Mokoro's theory on Gregorian rhythm certainly has some truths and benefits to it, but it also has some drawbacks. It's really quite a deep discussion, and there is much, much more which can be said about the rhythm of chant, and I explain all that in depth in my course. So, now that we've dispelled your fears about not having any training, and you now can read and sing some of the basics of square notation, you might be wondering how to take this even further. Remember that goal you have again, singing with confidence and ease, praying the chant. For this final section, I'm going to very quickly tackle 4 more concerns you may have. This is a crucial step that really brings everything together. Many of you may really want to learn Gregorian chant or join a schola, but have one or more of the following issues. I lack resources or training. I have a busy schedule and difficulty finding time to practice. I have no one to study, practice, or sing with, that is, no community in chant. And I don't understand Latin or know how to pronounce it correctly. These are quite easy to answer. First, I lack resources or training. Down below, I have provided you with links to some free resources you can find online to help you out. One is to a free PDF book, Beginner's Guide to Reading Square Notation, and another is to an online database of chants, Gregobase, where you can find and download chants in PDF or PNGs. Continuing with sheet music, there are also 3 apps which you can download on your phone or tablet, and these are SquareNote, Chant Tools, and Liber Pro. If you are looking for recordings of chants, you can always listen to my own recordings or those of the other members of Floriani or any of our albums that we produce. But I would also recommend any of the albums from the Abbey of Solesmes or Foncombeau, also the Nova Scola Gregoriana, directed by my friend Monsignor Alberto Turco, and last but not least, the Neumes app, which has all of the chants for every single day throughout the year, both Divine Office and Mass, recorded by the nuns of the Abbey of Notre-Dame de Fidélité of Juc, France, and now they are in the process of also adding recordings of the chants by the monks of Le Barou, also in France. Second, I have a busy schedule and difficulty finding time to practice or learn. I completely understand that. My own schedule is incredibly busy, as are those of many of my students, some of which are stay-at-home homeschooling moms of 5 or more children. But if you really want to learn, all it takes is setting aside 10 to 15 minutes a day to study and practice. If you can do more, great. If you can't even do that, try committing to practicing every other day or reducing the time to 2 or 3 minutes. Every little bit helps. What's most important is consistency. Again, it's all about the winning mindset. If you tell yourself you can't do it, you won't. If you tell yourself you can and you really believe it and set yourself a reasonable schedule, you absolutely can. Third, I have no one to study or practice with. This can be a real morale kicker, but don't let it get you down. Gregorian chant is prayer, so you don't actually need anyone else to sing with, although that is almost always more desirable. If you really want someone to study and sing with, and your own parish doesn't use Gregorian chant, try seeing if there are any other fellow parishioners who might have an interest, or reach out to other parishes in your diocese to see if there are any parishioners there who might be familiar with or interested in learning and practicing Gregorian chant. You can also try reaching out to any local colleges or universities to see if anyone there, student or teacher, is familiar with or interested in learning Gregorian chant. Additionally, I'm also working on a solution to this problem, so if you want to hear more about that, stick around to the end of this video. And lastly, I don't understand Latin or know how to pronounce it. Understanding the text of what you sing is critically important, but if you don't understand Latin, don't worry. I don't fully understand it either. I do understand it fairly well, but I am by no means fluent. Whenever you don't understand the Latin text, you can always have recourse to your missal for the text of the Mass, or an English breviary for the text of the Divine Office or the Liturgy of the Hours. As for Latin pronunciation, you will find a link below to a handy little pronunciation guide to Church Latin, which is pronounced differently from Classical Latin. Of course, the guide in the link is text only. It doesn't have any audio, but it can still be useful. But Latin pronunciation is something I spend a good amount of time on in my course as well. Okay, we've covered a lot in this video, and if you're still here watching, I hope you're already feeling more confident and proficient in your singing. But if you're like many of my students, you might be finding yourself even more excited about learning Gregorian chant than you were before. You're probably wondering, how can I take this further? That's exactly why I'm thrilled to share something special with you. You see, in this video, we could only scratch the surface. That's why I want to tell you about the upcoming release of my all-new Gregorian Chant Master Course. This is a comprehensive course that will take you deep into every aspect of Gregorian chant. I cover everything from the incredibly rich and fascinating history of Gregorian chant to a thorough study of the reading and sight singing of square notation, mastering Latin pronunciation, how to sing the Psalms of the Divine Office, or Liturgy of the Hours, how to sing the chants of the Mass, understanding Gregorian modes, and so much more. You'll gain access to resources that make learning easier, and you'll be part of an online community that's just as passionate as you are. But that's not all. Gregorian chant is so much more than just music. It's first and foremost prayer, sung prayer, liturgical prayer. This course doesn't just teach the notes and the mechanics. It immerses you in the spiritual and liturgical dimensions of the chant as well. When you master this, you're not only singing with confidence and proficiency, but you're also deepening your spiritual life, growing in grace, and contributing to the spiritual life of the church. I'll be sharing all the details very soon, so if you're interested in learning more about this master course and want to be among the first to join, click the link below to get on our early adopter list. Before we end here, what's been your biggest takeaway from this workshop? What are you going to do with this information? Leave a comment for me down below letting me know. I'd love to hear your answers. And of course, if you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and share it with someone who could benefit. I do read all your comments, and I can't wait to hear how you're planning to put this into action. If you are interested in learning more about my upcoming course, click on the link below to get on our early adopter list. Until next time, keep singing, and as always, sing wisely.